Alright, so the internet and trolls are going to tell you that FC Dramalona was at it again. But I'm here to say that looking at all the business that was done in a January transfer window, it actually is not as crazy as you think it is, and it does follow some logic progressions that do make sense with the state of the club. The drama for Laporta, Jordi Cruyff, Fuste and Mateu Alemany was more about cleaning up the messes of years past, administrations past, and making sure that this club is set up for the future, which is a lot to ask of that group. They had to balance the short term and the long term, and I totally understand. Everybody's going to have their gripes. I would have loved to see another left back come in to challenge Jordi Alba, and as I had said earlier last week, I would love to see Sergio Busquets have a little bit of competition. Maybe sign a pre-contract for Boubacar Kamara from Marseille, a player that is going to be able to fortify your future, but you get the business done now. But those wishes had to take a backseat to more immediate problems. Let's go over those. The most immediate issue was dealing with the wage dance. Signing anybody was impossible unless you moved somebody else's wages or salary off your books, whether that was paid for by a loan or a sale. And since every club in the world knew that Barca were trying to do that, they also lost their leverage. Add to that the fact that Messi was gone and Antoine Griezmann, his wages were off the books, and the likes of Piqué and others took large wage deductions. All that did was allow the likes of Memphis Depay and others to be registered for the summertime. So that didn't even help here in January. January was its own monster entirely. So it would be the same song and dance again, but arguably got harder because the market is more difficult in January and clubs have less money to spend. Barca could have just tried to stand pat and work on exits, but that wasn't really an option either. The health of Ansu Fati and the contract situation of Ousmane Dembele depleted the front line of talent. So Barca had to do something. But that something shouldn't jeopardize the summer plans, and it needs to be within the salary limits. And it needs to move the needle enough to help the club reach top 4. Because that's what this is all about, isn't it? I know those guys in suits don't get much sympathy from you Kool-Aids. That's not your money and that's not your debt. Make it happen, guys. You have the power. You have all this money coming in from all these different sources. Can't you figure it out? And one of the reasons I think I'm going to be really positive here is I think that Mateu Alemany largely figured a bunch of things out. And that's why I think all things considered, my grades are going to be a bit higher than yours. You know me, I like to be positive here. So let's get out our pencils and work it all out. Starting with the transfers in, FERRAN Torres for 55 million euros plus 10 million in add-ons for a 5-year deal. 11 million every year for 5 years with amortization, and also agreeing to reduce his wages. This deal gets an A from me, and the only reason it doesn't get an A+ is that Man City pulled off a 17 million euro plus 1.5 deal for Julian Alvarez of River Plate. FERRAN Torres is 21 years old, one of the best young Spanish talents in the world, and able to play in multiple positions along the front line. Yes, he was injured and hadn't been playing, so it'll take him some time to regain his fitness. But this move is for the now and the future, and I think Alemany knocked it out of the park with this one. I do have a whole explainer about FERRAN Torres and his signing that's available on the channel, so check that out. And the too long didn't read is that I think FERRAN Torres is a solution for the short term and the long term, something that all these other moves just aren't that far-sighted about. Move 2 was that Adama Traore has returned to Spain. And to actually Barcelona, unlike FERRAN Torres, who's returning to Spain where he used to be with Valencia, Adama Traore returns to his roots at the Camp Nou. I'm giving this loan deal a B+. That's not a B+ for the player, but for the deal itself. Adama agreed to reduce his wages as he arrives with a loan with a 30 million euro purchase option, but it's not mandatory. It'll be a 5-year deal in case they sign him permanently over the summer. That's a low risk, medium to high reward for a player that also has the good fortune of coming home. His being in the 99th percentile in dribbles are going to get your heart racing, but being in the 24th percentile in non-penalty expected goals with just 0.15 per 90 is, well, it's not great. Don't expect goals and you won't get disappointed. But if it does work out, this was a flyer on a player that's motivated to return home and prove himself. So Barca could have done a lot worse looking at the rest of the market. DANI ALVES also returning home. This one gets an A for me. It's a free agent deal, and the reason it's not an A+ is because maybe there might have been another player that's going to add something more for the long term, and it really just is a short-term option. But I'm not even sure if there was a player out there who was willing to reduce their wages to the league minimum to come on a free transfer. He's a legend doing the club a favor, and with the shells that have become Serginho Dest and Oscar Mingueza, Alves may be very, very important to Barca finishing top 4. Over the summer, Barca will have to completely reevaluate that position, but Alves does allow them to tread some water at the right back spot. And again, I think the club is going to take it, with the legend just basically doing some goodwill and saying, I know you won't be able to pat me on the back, but thanks for all those trophies then. I'm going to make sure I take care of you now. So thank you, Dani Alves. This next one, it doesn't really matter in the transfer sense of things, so it's not going to get a grade, but Nico Gonzalez being promoted to the first team is helpful for another young player, potentially in this spring, to carve out some minutes and get his role, because only a certain number of Barca B players can be featuring for the first team at one time. So having Nico Gonzalez getting a first team number and being incorporated in that squad and not having to worry about that rule makes things a lot easier for Xavi, so he can actually put Nico on the field. Also worth mentioning is Samuel Umtiti's renewal, a deal that keeps him at the club till 2026, but more importantly, massively reduces his wages so Barca can actually get other business done. That's why I give this one an A-, because while the club had to make concessions to keep him around, they were able to put him at a manageable number and use that to register FERRAN Torres. This deal also means that moving off Umtiti would be nice, but the club isn't as captive to his wages moving forward as you might think they are. And finally, speaking of taking wage cuts, Pierre-Emerick Aubameyang is arriving to the club on what looks to be a free agent move, taking his wages from a reported £350,000 a week to less than £100,000 a week, which means he wanted to play for Barcelona, but I actually do consider this him maybe wanting to get away from Arteta more than he even wanted to come to Barca, and Barca was a lifeline that he needed. He comes on a free because he seems to be terminating his contract with Arsenal and signing for 6 months with an additional year option. At 32 and having all the issues he's had this season though, I still have to give this a B-. It feels a bit rushed coming on transfer deadline day, and even if he's on cheap wages, you now have 3 emergency center forwards in Luke de Jong, Martin Braithwaite, and Aubameyang, the latter 2 still being around next season. I just hope Barca didn't lock themselves into a squad spot and a player for the next 18 months that won't really help the team. But when he's good, and we know that the Sierra Leone forward is capable and I think might have something left in his boots. If Barca can get the best version of 32-year-old Aubameyang and then 33-year-old Aubameyang, then this deal makes a lot of sense and works out. Another player willing to sacrifice to play for the Blaugrana. And now for the outros, Philippe Coutinho, we start with him obviously. He is on a season-long loan to Aston Villa with a purchase option of what is a reported 40 million euros. Villa also has agreed to pay the main part of his salary, so for I think that reason even, I'm giving this a B+. It didn't seem like there was a market at all for him, but this does turn into an A+ if Villa purchases him over the summer. That move, coupled with Antoine Griezmann's to Atleti, would mean that those 2 wages plus Dembele's are all off the books by the summer of 2022. Finally. And for Alemany to do that by January of 2022, after only being in the job for 10 months, is actually quite remarkable. So to that, I say good on you, Alemany, and good on you, Coutinho. Light up the Premier League. Please. Alex Collado also moved out on loan. He headed to Granada, where Barcelona have already seen him play for Granada, and he helped the Andalusians to a point against the Blaugrana. But for this move, this loan deal with no purchase option, I'm actually giving it a C-, because it was the right move, just a few months too late. He's already looking settled, yes, and he may never make it back to Barca, but this at least jumpstarts his career, and Barca could potentially sell him on over the summer instead of having to eat his contract or some other nonsense like that because he wasn't playing and therefore would have no market value. As I said, this grade is just so low because over the summer, it would have gotten A- from me, maybe even an A, but now it gets a C-. It's just frustrating for the poor player to have to wait around for 6 months. Also going on loan is Iñaki Peña to Galatasaray. This one gets a solid A for me, and of all the deals, the outros we talk about, this one might be the one that's most beneficial to all 3 parties involved. The one that's letting the player go, the one that's getting the player, and the player himself. 35-year-old Fernando Muslera has been out long-term for Galatasaray with a knee injury and has left 3 backups to pick up the pieces. Peña comes in from day 1 to take the gloves, and I expect him to get them. Unfortunately, Galatasaray aren't having their normally terrific season, sitting down in 15th place and just 2 points out of the relegation zone, but new manager and former Barca man, Domènec Torrent, who was just appointed 2 weeks ago, will likely trust Peña to help the club improve their standing in the league. This move gets an A, because again, he'll get the starting spot at a popular club, and if he succeeds, he'll be right back to Barca to take the backup job from Neto next season. Or he could also be sold in the summertime. Either way, I think it's a win-win for everybody involved and could be a big move for the 22-year-old in his career. Next up, Sergio Aguero heading to retirement. This one gets an incomplete, no grade. I'm just sad, I'm frustrated. It has to be on here because this move mattered. Moving off that squad spot freed up some wages for somebody else or freed up a space for somebody else in the squad. And it's just an unfortunate turn of events. I would rather have Aguero over Luta Young, Aubameyang, or Adama Traore, but here we are. For him to retire to allow Barca to register players was another bout of goodwill for a player that didn't owe the club anything. So once more, thank you to Sergio Aguero. And lastly for the outros, YUSUF DEMIR, who had his loan terminated. This deal gets a D+ for me, and I think I'm a bit frustrated and probably unfair to the deal itself. I understand the club had to do it. They could not pay that €10 million buy option for him. That would have happened if he played too many games. So to send him back on a terminated loan to Rapid Vienna, it's just frustrating, I think, for the player and for anybody who wanted to see what he could do. He was supposed to arrive from Rapid Vienna on loan at Barca B this season, but he was thrown into the deep part of the lake too soon, and now his days at Barca are over before they've begun. Unlike a player like Alen Halilovic, I hope DEMIR can rebound quickly and become the professional that we know that I think he is capable of being. We saw those flashes, but Barca could not pay for those flashes, so they had to move off this deal. Again, it makes sense, it's logical, it's just a bit frustrating, and it seems to be looking for the long term when they first signed him, but then having to do something in the short term, and he wound up getting the short end of the stick. And finally, this is my Dembele situation. For the intros and the outros, it's the guy that stays put that gives me a C grade. And I say that because at this point, it does look like he's staying, even if the club puts him in the stands. I mean, are they going to do that? Are they going to terminate his contract? We'll have to see. I'm not sure if Barca actually have the money to terminate his contract or how that will work against their salary limit and how that'll affect registering Aubameyang. So that stuff is all going to continue to play out in the coming hours and days, and I'm not sure who knows what's what at this point. But from the Barca perspective, they're kind of looking like they made the right moves in not catering to what his demands were. It seems like no other club moved for him. Man United, Chelsea, Tottenham, Arsenal, PSG. Seems like nobody wanted him and were willing to accept the wages that his agent is asking Barcelona for. From the very beginning, it feels like this would play out this way. And once Barca didn't renew him last summer, Dembele's camp got the leverage, so the club could only do with what they had. So a C grade is based on what Alemany could have done here in January. The club did the right thing and held steadfast in not giving him too much money in renewal. But now they're also stuck either putting him in the stands or playing a player that'll leave for free. And if he had renewed at a lower wage, or if they were able to sell him now, they might have been able to bring in a bigger fish, but being stuck in this contract negotiation kind of limited them with what they could do. It's not really a good resolution here in January for the club or the player. But, as I said, I think the reason it's a C and not lower is the club didn't compromise the future. He's going to be a free agent, will have to say goodbye, and eat what is, very much like Griezmann and Coutinho, the sins of the past. Okay, so overall, as I warned you, I think I was positive or more positive than most would normally be with this kind of thing, but I think there was a lot to do, and Alemany did check a lot of the boxes. And now we actually get to look ahead to the summer and be positive for what Barca might be able to do in that transfer window when a lot more big fishes are going to be available. It's hard to believe that Dembele, Aubameyang, Coutinho, Umtiti, FERRAN, TORRES, that was all the January transfer window. So for all that to be done in just 1 month, that's why I give my overall grade for the January transfer window an A to Mateu Alemany. I think he hit all the boxes or did his best on all those things that he had to do on the ledger. And for the rest of this season, I think he's done his best to deal with the continued injuries to Ansu Fati and to give this team a fighting chance at finishing top 4. Which once more, this January transfer window, regardless of the summer and all the long-term stuff, it was all about how well they could do in this 6 months, and could he build a squad that could contend, and what's Xavi going to be able to do with these players? And I think Alemany gave Xavi the tools he needs to finish top 4. That's why it's an A from me. I may even bump it up to an A+ if FERRAN, Araujo, or Gabi, or both, are able to renew in the next coming weeks. I hope to see that happen. In the meantime, we've got more transfer talk on the podcast tomorrow and some other content coming out during the international break. And until then, as always, Forza Barca.